Great scheme we have.
All right. And with that, you are live.
Very good. Well, we're live, but I've lost now I only have the city of Oneonta up on the site. Anybody here?
Yes.
Swipe, John, swipe from right to left on your iPad and you should be able to see everybody else.
I've got it now. Thank you. Gary's here or will not? So far not. Well, let us begin. As I understand it, we have two items on the agenda. One has to do with an asteroid collision, and the other has to do with term limits. Are we agreed on that? I don't have a printed version.
You're correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Two items.
Let's start with the film or the permit for the streets. There's a lot of paper about this. Is there a summary about what this is and where it stands at the moment? Hello?
I guess I'll take it. You have an email in front of you. It contains the application permit, payment confirmation, and the summary from the applicant regarding the two dates. One was tentatively scheduled for August 10th. The second is scheduled for August 14th, neither of which obviously can be complied with prior to the next council meeting and official council action. The applicant has been asked and has agreed to hold off on any outside filming until a consensus of any sort is made by the council so that he can have further guidance at that time. One application is for closure of Main Street. They would like to film people exiting and entering one of the establishments on Main. They are also, as part of this application, inquiring about the use of emergency vehicles, one from police, one from fire, to essentially demonstrate a world, as they put it, quote unquote, in chaos. The second one is for, I believe it's Central Avenue, I don't have it in front of me, sorry, that indicates that they want to close that down and show essentially the families leaving, preparing for evacuation, that kind of deal, also surrounded in a shroud of, their word again, chaos.
Okay, I'm interested in the Central Avenue request because that's my chance to play the Steve McQueen role in The Blob. But where have we, is there any complication to this, or how does it need to be arranged?
Well, you're going to have a street closure in the middle of the day during the week, granted low traffic area. So that's one of the things that you need to address. Second thing to consider is the fact that they want to use emergency vehicles and personnel. It's not an event. We have had filmings in the past, but not to this scale as far as the closure of Main Street. The previous filming was a number of years ago and they shut down a small section of Beat Street. This is a much more large scale project using a far more amount of our resources.
Where, thoughts on it from anyone? It seems like a kind of it could be considered a normal request, barring the logistical issues. That's informing everybody about the street closure, and then on Central Avenue, the neighbors being aware that this is happening. Are they planning on they want the neighbors to stay in the house, or as they're bringing in a crowd of their own, or do we know anything about that?
They had in one of their emails indicated that they would like to invite the neighbors to attend. This one, they have people loading their families into their cars, arguing. They put boarding up windows and leaving the area. They want to stage people from the top of the road to Spruce Street and driveways of the homeowners who have agreed to be involved. They'll drive down the hill a number of times to capture different angles. And at the bottom of the hill, they capture a small dialogue scene.
Have they talked to the neighbors at all about this?
They have not indicated that.
I've got quite a few concerns about it. I mean, it would be great to have a movie filmed here. Don't get me wrong, but they're looking to film this during the week. So Shutting down Central Avenue is one thing. Shutting down Main Street during the week is a whole other issue, especially if it's during the day.
And they are looking for daytime, yes.
How many blocks of Main Street did they say?
They initially wanted a smaller section. I believe it was Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, that sent out a follow-up email indicating something that would be more feasible.
Yeah, I mean, logistically speaking, closing Dietz to Ford like they requested doesn't make sense. If you have trucks or any kind of traffic coming down Main and then turning onto Dietz or Ford, that's problematic. So it just makes sense to do the normal full closure from Chestnut to Elm, just like we did this past weekend, basically, except for a shorter time period. They're requesting 2 hours.
And what are the dates that they're looking for again? One more time.
They
10th
were
and the
initially
14th
looking for the
won't
10th and the 14th, correct. So it would be anything after the council meeting.
work. So when we have
Which is-
7,000 more people here in town.
which would include students on Central Avenue. So who's going to handle the logistics of this? Talking to neighbors and,
I mean, I would presume that would fall on to the company.
Yeah, I think their application, they had some narrative there that indicated either they had or they would be contacting the neighbors on Central Ave.
Did they say what time? Go ahead, Greg, sorry.
I was gonna say, DPW would just give them a few barricades for Central Ave. That would be simple on our part. We'd have to do the closure on Main Street, and then it's whether or not the police and fire are available and authorized to have their vehicles run up and down Main Street lights and sirens to provide the effect they're
Did
looking.
they say how long they wanted Main Street closed?
It was a small, I have their application. Let me, trying to switch back and forth. I'm sorry.
I feel like we need to take this one part at a time.
Central Ave closure is a 7-hour window, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then
Main Street was 1 to 3 p.m.
1 to 3, correct.
well, where do we stand with, closing, we've closed off Main Street without getting permissions of people, haven't we? For parades and such. Do we get any blowback from that? From the owners? It's only for 2 hours approximately.
Yeah, the only blowback we generally get is from some establishments that feel that their business may not be as accessible when it's closed down. But with
Yeah.
that short of a time frame, I don't know that that's a.
When does the blowback come? Are they
What do
going to
you
be
mean?
informing it? Or are they going to be, we would inform everyone that or the city would inform everyone that the street is going to be closed for a couple of hours, Main Street. That would be the process?
We would certainly help them do that. We typically, what we do for any street closures is we send out a notification on our Facebook indicating, but it's generally typically involved some sort of city sponsored or city involved event. We don't typically, if it's a third party that has no involvement with the city, we don't typically aid in the notification process.
This is going to be more than just a street closure, though, John.
So
That's my
absolutely.
concern. That's
Because-
my big concern.
Yeah, I mean, 1 to 3, I mean, I'd feel slightly better if it was 2 to 4, but there's a section of the city that people aren't going to be able to go in and get lunch if they want to. So there's some restaurants that are going to be fine and others that aren't going to be able to get any customers at all because you won't even be able to walk there. I would assume it would be blocked off so you don't get in their shot.
Well, there's an enforcement issue too around that, about what the city does if people decide they want to be in the shot, or this happens in Philadelphia and New York, where people make nuisances of themselves until they're paid off.
Luke, you were going to say something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's my concern too, is the potential financial impact. Even though it's a couple hours, as Greg was saying, it would still be the city's responsibility to set up and take down those barricades. They're asking for emergency personnel and vehicles to borrow, which maybe in an ordinary time when we're not facing such financial crunch, would be something that we could kind of just waive off. I have concerns about that.
Well, are they looking? They're looking for emergency vehicles and our personnel.
Yeah.
It's
It just doesn't seem to me a wise allocation of our limited resources.
And I have no idea what other bigger cities do in a case like this, because obviously we have police cars and fire trucks and movies all the time, but this isn't a multi-million-dollar production here. And I mean, borrowing personnel, if it was during their off time, I could see allowing that, but cars and fire trucks, and they're talking for what I'm assuming the for which filming do they need the police and fire? Do we know that? Is it for the Central Ave one or the Main Street one?
Main Street.
I think, they just want them to run down the street. I don't know if an alternative or an option would be to tell them, if our police and fire are not occupied at the time, when you call and request it during that time period, we'll run down the street. I mean, that's totally up to the chiefs whether they're willing to do that. But it could be something where we tell them, if we're available, we're not occupied, our guys that are on shift at that time can run down the street for you. If not, then maybe you can edit in some police and fire sirens in the background. I don't know. Just throwing an idea out there.
Yeah.
That way we wouldn't have anyone coming in on overtime. Certainly.
Right. I would assume we're not talking about guys in full gear, just talking a couple to drive the truck, or they talk and that's it?
Sounds like they're trying to replicate a response type scenario.
Yeah.
but also a panic. People are going to be running out of a bar. And so I feel very neutral about it. I don't know that you'd be able to get for 10 to 5 happy campers on Central Avenue, and especially asking people to act as extras or have their houses boarded up. I have an escape ladder to come down from the second floor of my house. But
I would say with Central Avenue, you know, I'm inclined to allow that, to give a yes, but with a stipulation that if there's a neighbor there that wants to leave their house and come back, you know, they have no right to stop them. It may mess up their shot, but too bad.
Yeah.
That's a long time period to tie up a neighborhood.
no, absolutely.
Some people may be on board with it. Others,
It sounds like they actually want to have the houses used as props. I mean, these are just open questions.
Right.
But you want houses used as props? Do you want boards or the kind of equipment you use to board up windows to be simulated in terms of hurricane proofing their house? Or how much panic do they want to see? It's just a lot of questions. I don't know that you're going to.
well, John, I'm thinking that some of those questions, it's really going to have to be between the production company and the homeowners. Maybe our job is strictly, as far as Central Avenue goes, is strictly, do we allow them to block off the road for the 7 or 8 hour period?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And if they can't get any buy-in from the neighbors, so be it. That's their problem. But I think maybe we should really focus on whether we allow them to block off the road, and then the Main Street piece with police fire. Yeah, we don't have the information, but I think we have to narrow.
Well, there not that many houses on Central are going to be affected. Not that many. You're but they need to handle the logistics somehow. We don't have a film board of Oneonta that's going to, clear the way for that. New York, Philadelphia, they want films made in those in those places for commercial reasons. This seems like a smaller. I don't know what they're, that's all.
I do like Dave's idea in regard to Central. If it is shut down and people that live in that particular section, are informed that they can come and go if they need to, and the film company cannot stop them, I'm all right with that. My more concern is North Main Street is my bigger concern.
I think there's been other events I know in the past, whether it should have happened or not. Like I remember when my kids were in soccer, you'd have on-duty fire personnel showing up with a small truck to watch their kid play soccer, and they were on duty, and they knew they had to be, if they were called, they had to leave immediately. Right or wrong, that's what happened. If we're talking Main Street, if it's one firefighter and it's got to be somebody off duty. Maybe how often do we take a fire engine out versus an ambulance? I'm assuming they're only looking for a fire engine.
That's what was described in the application.
Okay.
A fire truck. So I would presume they're referring to the engine.
Maybe with a stipulation from the chief, leave it to the chief to decide what truck we take is allowed out there, and it's got to be somebody that's not on duty. And if they need that truck, they immediately leave. No questions asked. They just go. I could be swayed either way on this.
Yeah, I mean that sounds reasonable to me. My biggest reservation is just the concern with occupying the fire department and before that police, but I guess it sounds more like they just want the engine. But if Chief Pigeon is comfortable with it and thinks that he can spare an officer and an engine with that stipulation you said, I'd be okay with that.
And as far as the police go, I feel like the police, it's a little bit easier. If we had somebody that was on duty in their car and they were downtown, unless they were called away. But I don't know if we can, do we have enough vehicles to use somebody that's off duty that borrows a vehicle?
Depends on what they have scheduled on staff that day. Minimum shift is 3, or at least it used to be. So as long as there was a dispatcher and 2 officers, they were considered full staff for the day.
And they would have a vehicle for somebody that's off duty to take?
With a staffing of 3, yeah.
Okay.
It just depends on what they have scheduled to work that day.
Yeah, for me, I think it's important that if we allow any personnel down there, police and fire, they're not on duty at the time. Mm-hmm. They've got to be off duty. So it comes down to the vehicles.
Clarifying question: do you mean they're not regularly scheduled, but they'll come in to work overtime to do this?
No,
I'm not
sure.
This is use of a police vehicle or a fire vehicle for non-city purposes. So like someone off duty. I don't know, Katie. Maybe you have an opinion on that, but I don't think we can have an off duty anyone equipment.
I think this is really tricky because it comes down to liability. Yeah. What if there was an accident with the fire truck? What if there was, the person got injured? Would it fall under our workers' comp? Like, I hate to regulation it to death if it's something that you feel strongly that you want to do. But yeah, I don't think that off-duty personnel is a good idea.
But then we're talking on duty, which is some level, it's just as bad. I feel like it's easier to do with police than fire, because you got to take the fire truck out.
I'm not going to speak for the Chiefs, but they do take fire trucks out and run them periodically because they don't get run to fires very often, fortunately in Oneonta. So they do training exercises. Maybe it's something they could coordinate with the filmmakers to do it at a time that works for them. And obviously, if they get called to a fire, they're not going to go down Main Street unless they have to. But I would say I'd totally defer to the Chiefs on that. I just want to say that since they're not.
The logistics of this. Central Avenue is near and dear to my heart. And I'm concerned about, whether people would welcome this or not. I have been in a couple of places where filming was done on my street, and it was commercials being filmed, and they really took care of this number of hours. They just weren't dealing with volunteers. They brought in a food truck. They fed everybody on the street, everyone who lived on the street, and people kind of got into it. But I'm afraid of the blowback that may come if they don't have the agreement, if there's any inconvenience or unexpected, how do you visualizing this? I'm not sure that it'll be a happy time here. And I live on the street.
I think, my view on
Maybe
it
they
is,
should do it on Dave Street.
my view on it
Nobody's
is,
here. They may as well.
if the folks that it's directly impacting, if we stipulate that the film company has to give them notice and a time to respond, if they have objections, then that can be for them and the film company to work out, or if it's significant enough, we can say no. But that would be something I would think that the film company would be responsible for, was making sure that they're even welcome there.
I would suggest, it sounds like nobody has a strong opinion on this with any of it. Do we want to just push this to the full council to discuss? Or nobody has a strong opinion about that either?
I'd be in favor of that. I'd like to hear some other perspectives. Not that I don't appreciate both of yours, but it's nice to hear from the full council as well.
I think in the meantime, what I would recommend, John, do you want to go and talk to your neighbors
No,
and get some opinions about whether see how they feel about this? Let them know the date of the filming. And I still feel like we're in the dark with.
well, I think we're quite in the dark. No, I don't really want to talk to my neighbors as an agent of this applicant, and sell it before it or against it.
I'm not saying to sell it. I'm just trying to get so we have an opinion of people from the street.
I think that would better come not from me, because I don't know very much about it.
Gary, do you have any thoughts on this?
I defer to whatever the committee decides.
If the council votes for it, I will vote against it to give myself some defensibility. I didn't want it, but the other 7 did.
What's our?
I'm
What's our
sort of thinking
liability?
about that, but I really feel it could be
Katie-
fun.
Katie, I'd like to get your opinion on this, like from the aspects of using the police and fire vehicles and personnel for 2 hours.
I think it's a horrible idea. I want to be supportive of a local filmmaker, but closing a street is one thing. Using personnel is another. I think that it raises questions about, I know that Greg makes the point that they take the fire trucks out for training activities, et cetera. Those are departmentally related activities. That's training. That's different than a private filmmaker attempting to use, public resources for a private project. I mean, again, I don't want to be not supportive. I guess I'm only opining because I'm being asked to, but I think that it may compel union issues. I mean, do we have to negotiate this? Do we have to negotiate the impact? I mean, I don't know.
And we're going to be paying for personnel to sit there for 2 hours.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
do our personnel even want to appear in this film? I mean, will we have the right people who are available? I mean, maybe people won't be comfortable. I mean, I know I'm what ifing it to death. I just think that, closing a street to film or for any project becomes very different once you start involving, people, employees. Do we know, I mean, have the chiefs opined on this, Carrie, Greg? I mean,
They have, and I pulled up their emails. They both indicated that in general, they would have no issues helping out. But both with the caveat that as long as City Hall approves, as Chief Brenner pointed out, the permit process would have to be followed, blocking the road, all that is involved. That, explaining to them that there's a lot more to this than just running their truck down the road.
I guess the question is, does the city benefit from this? I mean, when you look at the plus and minuses, is there a benefit to the city? I don't know the answer. Of course, big film companies pay cities tons of money and create tons of jobs and a lot of economic activity. So cities will bend over backwards to have movies. I don't know that, does the city benefit from this is the question. And I'm not sure. I haven't looked carefully at their proposal, but I don't think they're offering to compensate the city for the time spent by employees and the use of the equipment, are they?
There was no indication of that. And they stated that their intention is simply to highlight Oneonta and the county as a whole as a place that is clean, close, and camera ready.
And the target of an asteroid.
Yes, the target of an asteroid.
And don't forget there's going to be businesses on Main Street impacted. I can't imagine that they wouldn't be.
The more we talk about it, the more the impact, especially with COVID, that it's already had on this community. More disruption just doesn't seem super, even if it's a couple hours, even if it's 7 hours, which is a lot, it's just not sitting right with me. I don't feel comfortable with it.
Well, we got Katie's opinion on it. I would still like to hear what the rest of the council has to say on this. I think this is a really strange, out of the ordinary request. And, I would love to be able to help a local film crew. I can't imagine them compensating anybody. I've seen film crews in New York and how they take care of, and actually New Jersey in the neighborhoods I've seen, and how they take care of the residents. And I don't see them having the funds to bring a food truck and things like that. I don't think this is an easy answer, an easy request. I'd like to know what the other council members have to say about it. So, I mean, I'm willing to give a yes to move it forward. But I'm not enthusiastic about this one at all.
In the interim, are there any questions that you want asked of the applicant that you feel were unanswered, something that we could get together to submit to the council as a whole, or do you feel the application is pretty complete for what you'll need?
Yeah, I have as far as Central Avenue is concerned, I think we're not advocating that this become a film capital of the state. So I would like them to put in the effort to speak to the neighbors and explain what it is. They also have an expectation, and it seems that they they have a lot of work to do with this. They have an expectation of residents participating and adding to this thing that's going to involve I don't know what, and it's kind of it's almost like, hey kids, let's put on a show, and I'm not sure what they are expecting. That they've outlined what they want neighbors to do here, and I'm sensitive that it is one residential street, and if they don't sell it, in a sense, to the neighbors or get an agreement that would be okay, that's a lot of hours, 10 to 5, and they're going to be doing things, and it is going to be an inconvenience of some sort that the neighbors would have to agree to, and even the participation. And it's more complicated because it's citizens of Oneonta being involved, not just, the main street and the fire trucks and that sort of thing. So I'm sensitive to taking over a street without having the residents having a say in it. That's my
Terry,
joke of being against it if it seems to be going for it.
Carrie, can you tell me one more time, who's this group? Where are they from?
So the owner applicant is Corey Rowe. He states the company name is Otsego Media. They're in a partnership with a not-for-profit Otsego County Film Partnership. They call it Film Co-op or Film Coop. I don't know if it's a play on words, which the intention is.
Okay.
The only other possible source of information, certainly there's been filming done in Cooperstown. I don't know how they were real, high level films, I believe. I don't know if it's worth. Do we want this done in Oneonta? Do we want to have a toe in the water here with a sort of not established film organization having this experience here? Do we want to pursue this?
John, I mean, what movies are you talking about besides A League of Their Own? And that was, I mean, they did shoot in Cooperstown. It was minimal shooting, and I don't think they blocked off the street.
Maybe not. I
know.
just know League of Their Own, and
Yeah.
it is a larger city phenomenon.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But a
usually when they
smaller,
need emergency vehicles, they're fake vehicles that have decals put on them, and there's actors that are using those vehicles.
yeah,
I would suggest, Katie brought up some good points regarding union issues and personnel matters. Probably would not be wise to approve this prior to knowing that it was not going to cause problems for us with the use of personnel and unions, et cetera. So I don't know how to resolve that, but without knowing, listening to what Katie said, without knowing that it would not cause problems for us, I don't know if there's a way to resolve it, but it doesn't sound wise to approve something that we don't know will not cause personnel issues for us.
Well, how do we find out if there's going to be personnel issues for us with this?
Happy to look into it and report back.
Okay. So John, do we move this forward then?
I think it's fine to move it forward. I know I lived in Verona, New Jersey when The Sopranos was being filmed a lot, and people just loved it. But that was Tony Soprano. They had to love it. But this seems rather kind of speculative. So we can move it. I don't want to hold it up here unless people could say they already would feel they'd vote no.
Luke?
as I was saying before, I think additional council input is appreciated. If I were to vote today, which I'm not, I'd probably say no. But I'll reserve that till the time we vote. And again, I definitely appreciate Katie's point, and that's really my big concern. That and the previous impact on the community disruption. But I am comfortable moving up to council for discussion.
Again, my if we even said yes, it would be contingent on their taking care of the residents, getting agreement from the residents about all that's involved. Imagine your own street, being utilized for this, and voting for it, and finding that a number of people on your street and in your neighborhood really find it a pain in the neck. It's not a block party.
Mm-mm.
Well, I think if this is going to be on the council agenda for discussion for a permit, is there a
We
way
need
to
to-
notification out to the residents of Central Ave so they can provide input?
That we would do that?
Yeah, that's who does that? By mail, I mean,
That's how I was suggesting that maybe you want to talk to people on Central Ave, John.
I don't. You
Yeah,
can talk to them. No, I really don't, because it's not my job to forward this sort of a promotion to do this. Now, I could talk to a couple of people, but there are going to be people living here or near the street that are not here until the students start. I'll talk to a couple of people and they'll ask a question that I can't answer. What are we supposed to do? How busy is it going to be? Are we going to be in it or not in it? The idea that is here as outlined is we'll need people to be acting for us and that sort of thing. And I don't know that they'll get that. They're actually saying bringing in, they will populate the street. I don't know what any of that means. So I don't want to go asking for permission when I can't explain it.
I think maybe the best thing to do at this point would probably just to move it up to full council.
We can do that.
I would suggest before you move it up to full council that,
We get answers.
yeah, exactly. Create a list of questions, because not having the answers to the questions you're asking, we go to the council meeting and have 8 people asking the same questions without answers. We'll spin our wheels for an hour without coming up with an answer.
In some ways, I think it is fully this company's responsibility to do the groundwork. Unless we want to form some sort of ad hoc film advisory board for the city of Oneonta.
Okay, so here's some questions I have. Whose job is it going to be to ask them, though?
of the applicant,
Yes.
we've been in email communication with him. We have no problem forwarding. Yeah.
Some of the questions I have, number one would be, what's their plan to talk with residents on the street? What's their plan if residents on the street do not want to participate in this and they have to come and go for whatever reason? And as far as Main Street goes, can they shoot, why do they need the entire street closed down? And is that only for vehicles, emergency vehicles? And if we do not provide them emergency vehicles, can they still film the shot without shutting down Main Street. Because I think we all want to help them, but we've got some concerns, and this is not a big blockbuster with a huge budget, obviously. John, we have one more item to discuss.
Sure, let's
Are
go.
are we finished with this item?
I'm very finished with it. Yeah, I'm not supportive of it. So, but we can go to bring it to council.
Okay.
And I'd appreciate people not just wondering about it, but having clearer positions on who's going to do what, and who from the city is going to be doing things. So that's that. We can move it up. But I agree with Gary. We need to have answers to these questions.
Right.
Otherwise, we're just really out of our depth as a council. Approving it or disapproving it. Disapproving it's easier. So on to term limits. And oh, by the way, the council meeting is next week, correct? Or no? Who's going to prepare to know that we are ready to bring it to council with these questions answered?
I think that there's two separate things at work here. So there's some information that we need from the company that Carrie, it sounds like, will communicate. And then I will communicate on the personnel concerns, the vehicle equipment, staffing concerns. And then Carrie and I will, send the committee perhaps a joint response. So you'll have, answers to the questions that have been raised.
Okay. All right. And if we don't have those.
Insurance concerns, is that been addressed in their application? I mean, if we crash $1 million fire truck, are they going to be reliable for it?
Always happens. In the application, they indicate that they do have a plan through a separate carrier to cover the city. And they are supposed to, as part of their application, furnish us proof that we've been named as an additional insured. Their current amount of coverage is $1 million, they indicate. I don't know if we can request something different if we do permit the vehicles to be involved.
Excuse me.
Yeah, they're already stating, let's move on to the other, the other questions, so we're not going into the twilight with this. So what is that, the question as I see it is having short-term term limits. Who raised this?
I added.
Glenn brought this up, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'll quickly rehash when this was discussed as part of the charter revision. It was brought up that there had been boards and commissions with people that were on there in some cases, like Parks and Rec, for a couple decades. And there weren't as many openings to bring in new blood. And what some of the boards had done is if somebody was chair and they were told, we need you to step down, you've been on there a long time, they stepped down and took an empty seat. And then somebody else took the chairmanship of the committee. So in essence, the committee didn't change at all. So, so that's where that all came from. We figured the reason why we put the limits in, and the limits are you can serve 3 terms, and they're typically 3 years each. And then you need to step away from that board and let somebody else have the opportunity to be part of that board or commission for a year. And then if another seat opens up, you can go back on if you want. But it was really to try to force, in some cases, it was force the hand of the mayor. Gary's done a great job filling boards and commissions, so I'm not picking on Gary, but it sort of forces the hand of the mayor at the time to try to branch out from just the people they know and reach out a little bit further than they were to bring new people in. And it forces people to step aside and allow that to happen too.
I'll just say, I'm not dug in on this one way or the other, but I support the term limits. 9 years is a considerable amount of time. We have a tendency to have the same people doing things. So either way is not a big deal.
Oh, go ahead, Gary.
No, I'm just saying either way is not a big deal for me, but I think 9 years is a long time. So I support the term limits.
I think where this is coming from, and I appreciate where it's coming from. It has to do with the Airport Commission, because it's such a very unique board that you've got to have some knowledge of how airports run, because of the fact of how we run the airport. I mean, we don't have an airport manager up there that knows how to do everything. And that's why also, was it this year? My years have run into each other. It was either this year or last fall where they came forward and they wanted to appoint somebody that was not from the city. They wanted us to branch out a little bit to try to get some people with knowledge on the board. I'm hesitant to go down that route of saying let's get rid of that, even for the Airport Commission.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
Here's another route to go. I don't know if the current charter would permit it, but if not, what about adding something that authorizes the council to waive term limits in specific cases?
Well, how about this, Gary? I mean, zoning and planning are very unique too. And there's a lot of knowledge that you need to gain. And the people that come onto that board don't necessarily know what they're doing, but they learn and they have to take continuing education to bring themselves up to speed. Why can't that be the argument for the Airport Commission as well?
Well, the airport, I remember when I joined the planning, I was appointed to the planning commission many, many years ago, and I knew nothing about it at the time.
Right.
And, I learned as I went and took the courses, and you're only one of 8. So if you're not an expert on it, you can sit back and learn until you get up to speed. Airport tends to be a little different because they are, even though not on paper, in practice, they are operational. I mean, they actually oversee the operation of the airport, which is not what the board is defined on paper. But that is in practice what they have turned out to be.
There's nothing. How many members do we have on that board? Is it 5?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, 5-member board.
I don't know if this was, well, I know they're having a hard time finding members, but one thing that helps with institutional knowledge is having a larger board too. I don't know. I would hesitate to waive that term limit on there. I mean, I'm not totally against it, but I would, that would be a last ditch issue, or solution for me. And do we know, is anybody who's coming off of that board this year?
I can pull up a sheet. That spreadsheet that I had done, if you give me 1 second, and I will pull it up and we'll find out who's ending out.
Yeah, my whole point is I'm wondering, is this like an imminent problem that we have where we've got to solve this now?
It's been on,
We do have a number
it's been
of
on the
boards
longest.
that will be losing members at the end of this year if term limits aren't adjusted, we'll say.
Isn't Ed one of them?
He is for zoning. I don't know if he is for planning. Or
He's not-
airport, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Airport. Thoughts, Luke?
I am in favor of term limits. I think that, like you said, having somebody on a board 20, 30 years is it's great for institutional knowledge, but it does limit some of those opportunities for others. But as been stated, for things like airport zoning and planning, there is some level of knowledge that's required going into it. So is there a way, and I don't have my charter in front of me, for specific commissions that we can instate a discretionary, as the mayor was saying, some discretion at the council if there's someone that wants to stay on longer?
Well, we can always do that, I'm sure. Maybe what the issue is that we have an issue brought before us to solve, but do we know that it's an issue? And I mean, Gary could answer that better than I can. Has it really been an issue to fill seats on boards and commissions? Like, how difficult has it been? And do we have any that are really empty and have been empty for a long time either? I don't have the answer to that.
No, I don't know that it's been a big problem. Airport's a little tougher because it does require a specific area
Right.
of knowledge, but overall, it has not been a problem.
I think the Airport Commission does have a very special role. That funding, dealing with the Federal Aviation Authority, et cetera, they often are getting the money. They're working with an engineering firm to do a number of things that are essential for the legality, in a sense, of the airport. And they get money, they manage. And I think you can actually identify the people who are most active in that, and also identify people who are not very active doing those things on the same commission. But if we look at the work of that commission, their expertise and then their active management involvement is essential. Where we're at sea again about whether we want to keep an airport or get rid of it, which they are also involved in. The other commissions have less ongoing responsibility. Parks and Recreation comes up with ideas, and but they're not saying let's divest ourselves of given a mission of can we get rid of Wilbur Park?
Yeah, there's less responsibility with the other ones. Maybe the first question we need to have asked, I don't think we need to come up with a solution to this today, but maybe just find out first, who is coming off that commission, how many people are coming off that commission, because it's possible it may be multiple people at the end of the year, since that was a commission that was formed and put everybody on at the same time. And I just don't remember if we gave one person, like, if we tried to stagger the terms from the beginning or not somehow, because I know there is a way to do that. So maybe,
my recollection, Dave, was that the original threesome that were appointed by Dick Miller was Dennis Finn,
yep,
Len, and Ed. So Ed's probably the only remaining one from the original appointment.
Okay.
And there may be, and I don't know about Len, but he may have a sustained interest, which is also contributing to the resources of that commission for doing marketing, trying to get, Len has been bringing up the idea of leasing space at the airport, long-term lease for a hangar, which is a vision is discussed sometimes about making the airport much more attractive. So, it's a mixed bag.
Well, let's find out about that with the airport. And if it turns out the airport is the one committee that's the problem because of its uniqueness, maybe we need to try to restructure the committee itself and who's on it. Do we need more city involvement on it and I'm not sure, I'm not going to pretend to know what guidelines we have to follow to have it be a committee. But do we want to somehow wrap that closer to being a department with resident involvement or something? I just don't know.
What is Len asked is he's brought this up. Maybe we can dodge it because of an exception. Do we ever want to have people spend more than 9 years on a particular committee?
I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't have term limits in boards and commissions, and to move people in, it encourages more involvement in the community. And we all know that it's only getting harder and harder to get people to take on the role of running for council. And we know that boards and commissions are a great way to get people's, feet wet and get them comfortable with doing public service. And if there's no opportunities to do boards and commissions because they're full and people have been there forever, I think it's problematic.
Well, we're running out of time, but from a legislative perspective, ordinarily we would have a law or a change in code presented to the council. And I don't think we're there. We can have a discussion about term limits, but I don't think we're in a position to have any motion put forward.
Well, I'm not going to put anything forward. No.
This would be a change to the charter. So
Right.
You'd have to go through a process similar to an ordinance.
Mm-hmm. And we don't know I think this needs more discussion.
We need to identify the problem and identify whether there's really a problem first. But if we identify the problem, then we can try to address the problem. So I think
so far, I agree with you. I think the Airport Commission presents a specific challenge just because of the nature of the airport, its management, its operation, et cetera. I don't think there's any other commission or any other group that is under such stress. I think people can move off of zoning. They can move off of other things after 9 years if need be. And they're also much easier in terms of the amount of work that might be and expertise that might be demanded of someone on such a board. So we can talk about it.
Require that after people have had 3 consecutive terms on a board or commission, that they serve on the Airport Commission. That was a joke.
I hope so. I didn't. Your sense of humor is coming back.
A little at a time.
Okay.
All right, I think I'm done here. If we're done here,
I'm done. Anybody else have material? So,
I think I am as well.
so
I just wanted to mention one thing, John, real quick, if I could.
sure.
Just so as a heads up, for the next council meeting, we'll have the short-term rental item on the agenda. You guys had discussed that previously, and Stephen had reached out to the planning commission for feedback. So as a heads up, that'll be on the agenda.
It will be, have you had that discussion, Dave, on planning?
Planning,
Short-term rental?
I haven't heard anything from planning about it.
Gary, what's the process that you were expecting?
Well, it's not what I'm expecting. The charter states that any change to the zoning code, the planning commission is given an opportunity to express their opinion.
Yeah,
So I
haven't
think
heard anything about
they've expressed their opinion to Stephen. That should be forwarded to the entire council, so you're aware of it before it comes to you. Has it been laid on the desks yet,
No,
Barry? So then it has to get laid on the desks like today or tomorrow if it's going to be on the next council meeting.
Is it in its final format yet?
it
Yes,
is,
I
it has
believe-
been, it has
Yeah.
been
Okay.
crafted that way.
Yeah, I think the only thing that was Dave, correct me, and John, but I think it was Dave's objection last time. It was a slight change in the language, correct, from last meeting?
Yeah, I think that was fixed. I made the comment that the definition didn't match what was later on. And,
That's right.
Right. And so Dave Merzig cleared that up and said it didn't really matter.
Right.
So
I think that was
the
the
next
only-
step.
I apologize, Mayor. Go ahead. I said I think that was unless I'm blanking, which it's totally possible. That was really the only thing that we were waiting on, correct? And that since that's cleared up, it should be pretty close to go.
Yeah, no, the next step is that Kerry should lay it on the desks of the council, and along with sending out whatever input was received from the planning commission by Stephen. And then from there, whatever the time period allows, it'll go on the next council agenda, which is what was specified by this committee.
And that's fine with me. I agree that that was the process. So if we can lay it on the desks, I think that we can move forward with that. The only thing that does concern me is this being such a controversial sort of topic, and the public is not necessarily tuned into our Zoom discussions, that there may be more responsibility for each council member to talk. Well, this is like surveying Central Avenue, but to talk to people about how they feel about a change in zone 2 and 1 for permitting owners and long-term residents to now be able to have short-term rentals.
A public hearing will be required
Mhm.
before it gets signed into law. It's the mayor's public hearing. So the council will vote on it prior to a public hearing, but I can't sign it until we have a public hearing. So we'll either have to have the public hearing virtually, if that's where we're still at, or find a way to hold it in real time. We'll jump off that bridge when we get to it.
Nicely put. Okay, let's end. All agreed?